Over 50 people were killed and more than 200 were injured when a gunman opened fire at spectators near Mandalay Bay Casino in Las Vegas. The incident occurred on Sunday night.
Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. A little technical difficulties. Usually we get a roll-in, but technicians in the back are, well, this is live from Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Welcome to the show, Iesha.
Thank you.
And Dimonique. Here we go, we're rolling.
Oh.
Go ahead, roll it. We have a roll-in of the gun violence in
50 people were killed and more than 200 were injured when a gunman opened fire at spectators near Mandalay Bay Casino in Las Vegas. The incident occurred on Sunday night at a music festival. Originally, it was reported that the gunman, who is believed to be a local resident, has killed 2 people, but the death toll climbed to 20 and then to 50. The suspect started shooting during the performance of an American country music singer who was playing on an open-air stage. The gunman opened fire from an automatic weapon from a hotel balcony. The singer stopped performing and escaped to safety while people in the audience started screaming and pressing themselves against the ground. According to eyewitnesses, more than 100 gunshots were made and thousands of spectators tried to flee. Later it was reported that the police killed the attacker, who was identified as 64-year-old Stephen Paddock, a resident of Nevada. The violence has become the deadliest mass shooting in modern history of the United States.
I picked that video to just give you a still moment. Without question, you were on the scene. And then this is modern day violence, gun violence. Now we're talking about assault weapons, and the Republicans, again, saying there's no time to talk about gun violence. And we have today on the show, what's happening here? We have today, we're live from Manhattan Neighborhood Network. We have today Iesha Sakou, this is right up your alley. But the gun violence is no smiling matter, especially this one in particular.
Absolutely.
But this is absolute horrendous. And this guy was mild-mannered, and he seemed to be a man of means. He had we can't find his beef in life. His brother, if you saw it, his brother was completely baffled on what happened. Come to find out he's a high roller, and this is well planned out. This guy had, how many, 47 weapons?
He had an arsenal.
An arsenal.
He had an arsenal.
And they're not going to talk about gun control? And with Trump in the White House, how can we get any sense out of anything? You know, the clown act he performed in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, oh my God.
Throwing the towels.
Okay.
This is clown time. And all this stuff, he's about to start a war with Korea. I mean, what are we up against here? It's laughable, but if it wasn't so crazy. I mean, this is insanity.
I think it's
all right?
even
So
insanity
good people
to
have to
10th
come
power.
together and make some sense of all this. So Iesha, you are selected as
Is the person
make
that makes
some
sense out of
this
this?
one.
You know, actually, this whole situation in Las Vegas was just, you know, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Right.
Because how many of these do we need to see? Maybe not in, it hasn't been in this magnitude, but mass shootings is whenever there is 3 or more shot in one shooting incident, right? So we see mass shootings literally. If that is the case, then we're seeing mass shootings all across the country in places like Chicago.
Oh, don't
right?
mention, oh.
And whether it's black people shooting black people or white people shooting white people, 3 or more, and maybe 4 or more in one incident is a mass shooting. So what we really have to look at, though, is not what led the person to do this. My bigger question is about the gun in the hand of someone who is mentally unfit to have that gun in his possession. And so what we see.
But this guy doesn't fit any of that category.
Well, he doesn't fit as we know now. I always say wait till the dust settles. Because when the dust settles, it's easy for someone to go from doing very well to having some mental issues. We make assumption because people are well off. They come from a so-called good family. They worked a pretty good job before, and he's, I think, worked for Martin Marietta and some other big companies before. And that sounds great. But there are people who are suffering with mental illness and mental issues who have done some great things, and they'll tell you themselves that they suffer from mental illness. So my question...
I just want to interject this. We might think of Donald Trump when we think of a madman with money. Really?
Well, there are people who said that he should be evaluated.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take the focus off the issue of guns.
Okay.
So my point is that the assault rifle that he was shooting people with had the capacity to shoot, a certain number of
buffer.
Bullets.
A bumper,
and that,
they call it.
Yeah. So the thing is how did it get in his hands? And not just that one. All of the ammo they found in the room, over 20 other assault rifles or guns in the hands of someone who, no matter what has happened earlier in his life and how great he may have been and jobs he may have had, was clearly mentally deranged at a time that he would shoot into a crowd and kill over 50-something people and injure another 200 or 300 people. Something is wrong with that. That clearly tells you that he was not functioning at full capacity, because no person functioning at full capacity would do that. So what we have to look at is how in a country as great as America, people are able to get guns in their hands and commit this kind of heinous act. And one thing that we know is there's something called the universal background check. Somewhere he had to purchase these guns.
Well, I understand that all these guns were purchased legally.
Right. So and my point exactly.
Don't they keep a count of how many guns a person has?
No.
But
so in some states,
they've got to change something.
Well, that's what we're talking about, and we're talking about the universal background check.
Okay.
So the universal background check is still sitting in Congress, waiting to become law. It's still a bill. So while we're sitting waiting for it to become law, we see people going, and especially when they thought it was going to become law a couple of years ago, people ran and bought up all of these assault rifles and guns because they thought that they would be limited in their capacity to purchase them. So now in certain states, you have people who are able to go and just purchase an AR, assault rifle, and walk right out of the store with it. And then go back again and purchase another, or purchase 2 or 3 at one time. There's no one keeping track of that because there's no universal background check. As long as you show ID, you're of age, have the money, you can walk out the store. The universal background check will make it so that before you can go in the store, Mr. Gilchrist, and purchase a weapon of any kind, there would be a background check that's done on you to make sure that you are fit to have that weapon, right? And then 2, that they are clear that you are who you say you are, and that you're in good standing, mentally, physically, and of course in terms of in good standing with the law. So that there would be a wait period, so that you couldn't purchase the gun and just go kill people. So we don't have that. New York has the toughest gun laws in the country. I know that because I was called by Governor Cuomo to give input on those laws when they were made. But other states do not. Other states have open carry. Other states have it where you can come into that state and purchase a trunk load of guns, meaning enough to fill up your trunk, and drive them up north of I-95 highway and sell them on streets like 125th Street, on 35th Street, in poor neighborhoods.
Nevada is an open state.
It's an open carry state.
You can walk around with a gun on your hip.
Absolutely.
And they have no metal detectors in the hotels?
No.
No.
How is that?
They're
talking about doing it now. They're talking about doing it now.
Yeah, whenever, like, my mom used to take me to go to a hotel to sleep overnight, for girl time or whatever. But there's never a metal detector. They never check your bags. They never actually like, are you okay? So just going. That's how he was able to go in the hotel with all those weapons.
10 bags.
Yeah.
There you know.
Nobody's suspicious. He's such a high roller that they don't pay him any mind.
Well, I
They
think.
thought he was shoveling in money instead of guns.
Well, they said he came in and out with bags each time, bringing in bags, and so there's no one question. I'm not sure. Had he been a black or Latino man, that he would have been
Muslim
afforded that kind of
Right.
access to come and go with bags in that way. There are, to me, there's a whole host of flags associated with this shooting. I'm understanding, and I don't know everything for fact, that there was someone outside the arena and saying things to people about that they were going to die and that kind of thing. So, I mean, we're hearing a lot of different things. But one of the things that, again, still troubles me is the fact that this individual was able to have access to that many guns in one place and have them in there and be able to take not only his life, but the life of 58 or whatever the count is.
58 people?
58 other people.
All right, you know what we're going to do? I've got a more in-depth look at that shot. That's too hot. All right, fix the shot. And plus, play the roll-in of gun violence before we come back. All right, play the second roll-in on gun violence.
But every time there's a mass shooting, especially where the numbers are just so high, there's always one conversation topic that grips the country: gun control. So while we're working on an in-depth exploration of the history of gun control and the weapons industry, we wanted to share some of our existing content on gun violence in the United States. Because check it, here at AJ Plus, it's important for us to be a resource for you, not just tell you what's happening in the world, but really understand it beyond the usual talking points. For instance, we've got 2 pieces that look at how gun violence in the United States compares to gun violence around the world.
There are 90 guns per 100 Americans, giving the country the honor of the highest gun ownership rate in the world.
In Canada, you must register your semi-automatics and handguns with a government. In the US, there are more states that prohibit all gun registration than states that have a form of gun registration.
We've also got a series exploring gun violence in the United States, including looking at the popularity of the AR-15.
Assault weapons and large capacity magazines were banned for a decade. During the ban, the number of people killed and wounded with assault weapons or guns using high capacity magazines was cut in half. After the ban expired, casualties shot up by more than 300%.
And exploring how the election of President Donald Trump has impacted and will impact the gun industry.
Most all the people who hate Trump are pussies. They're not going to take to the streets with guns. We've got the guns.
We've asked what the history of gun control in the United States has looked like. Before the Civil War, the right to own guns came with the right to own black slaves. After the Civil War, black Americans were finally able to own guns, which made many white Americans fear an armed rebellion. And we've also looked at what are some commonalities between some of the most notorious mass shooters.
And it's not just gender most mass shooters have in common. Another overlooked thread is a history of domestic violence.
We've still got a lot of work to do when it comes to covering gun violence and the gun control conversation in this country, and we're working on building that coverage. Next Sunday, we'll be publishing a longer, in-depth piece on the guns industry, but let us know in the comments what you want us to cover, what's overlooked, and what we at AJ Plus can do better.
I thought that was interesting. Did you get anything out of that?
Yeah.
She sort of covered a lot.
Per 100 people, there's 90 guns. That's,
Right?
yeah,
That's almost 1 gun per person.
yep.
That's a lot of
That's
guns.
a lot of guns. And this one man had 47.
Right.
47.
For what
An
purpose?
accountant. Mild-mannered accountant.
So they say. That's the other issue that I have. In the way that they talked about this man who took the life of 58 people and injured, I don't even have the count on how many, 530 people.
530
They're talking
injured.
about him being an accountant. They're talking about him being malmannered. They're talking about him being a nice guy. Had he been an African-American man, they would not be talking about him in that way.
Of course not.
But they would have said he was a madman, he was a killer, and that he doesn't need to live, and all of these kinds of things. We've seen that happen with African-American men and Latino men for doing less.
Yeah.
And here this man is being talked about in regards to his profession, almost as if he had not taken the lives of 58 people and injured 530 people. It's ridiculous.
Any theories of what happened or what's behind all of this? How about from the youth?
For me, I think it's just everything that's going on with the hurricanes, with people showing hates, going to
You mean
anti-Trump
Trump
rallies.
is setting the tone for something like this, you feel?
I feel like it is because he magnifies hatred so big, and he
Okay.
shows that. Like, how do you go to Puerto Rico and say, you know, thank you for everything that's going on, but you know, you're really killing our budget. Like, how do you do that at a time where it's lives that have been taken, where they are citizens of the United States. Puerto Rico is citizens of the United States, and it's like, you didn't say that when it came to Texas. You didn't say that with other places that got hit by the hurricane, but you say that to Puerto Rico, and I felt as if, and me and my parents talked about it, he really doesn't care about them. Because, by the way, it took so long for you to outreach and say something about it, at least, to show that you care. And then when you do, you just show, you know, and then with the paper towels, like throwing it like it's basketball. And I really felt that it was smart for people that was Puerto Rican and other nationalities to protest against the Trump Towers for that. Because, like the woman said that was on the news, they don't need just paper towels, they need food, they need water, they need diapers, they need feminine products. And it was just like a whole joke to him. And
Yeah.
it was,
He's making a mockery of America. Well, he does that whenever he goes anywhere. I think it's a sure sign that he's on his way out. And there's a rich man with a mental problem. I think his ego is complete. He's not. What is wrong with him?
Well, you have to remember when
bipolar?
people, there's a possibility of that. There are people all across the country calling for his evaluation, not just that for him to resign. But I think we have to look at what happens. The bigger thing is what happens when leadership acts in a way that is not good. And I'm not trying to equate him with the shooter in
Why
Las
can't we?
Vegas.
Why can't we?
We've kind of shifted
I mean,
from
look
that.
what he's done.
But his leadership is ordering the steps of other people in this country to sometimes act in the same way that he does, because that's what happens when you're
Any
a leader
man-
and a lot of people are able to see you and hear you, that they will mimic that.
Look at his insanity. Look at how crazy this man is. Anybody that can back the Nazis? Come on.
I don't think that he has a mental problem. It's just hatred. It's just pure hatred. He magnified
That's a
hatred
mental
within the
problem.
United States.
Hate
The
is a poison in
notification,
the system.
I got a CNN notification, and they said there's about 600 groups that are like the KKK.
Right.
And we could say they're mental because we feel as if everyone's equal, but they don't feel the same. So I don't think that it's a mental problem. I think it's the count of they feel like nothing is equal, and that's where the whole thing with Make America Great Again goes back to it, where Nixon time and other people's time where black people was not free. We have never been free. We feel like we are free, but we're not. We go to jail and work as slaves, but we're still counted as citizens. There's different accounts that you have to think about. I don't think he has a mental problem. I think that he's just full of hatred.
Well, I see him as a nut because I grew up around in his surroundings. You know, I've got 5 years on this guy, and in the 70s I was going to the plaza, and I know how rich people act. And he wanted to be black in the late 80s. He thought it was advantageous to be black. So
And it
he's
was
an
cool.
opportunist. That's all he is. He's a slickster, a con man. And you can see how he's just playing with America. He knows he's dead wrong in what he's doing.
I don't think he believes
Yes,
it.
he does. He knows the Russians backed him 100%. He won't
course.
accept any of that. He won't accept it. It's what is he saying? It's fake news?
He says everything is fake news.
I mean, come on, he's crazy. He's out of his mind. All right, I'm giving you a little taste of Donald Trump talking about. You have that piece ready for me? It says Trump is the one where he talks in Trump Tower. I hope you went over it. It's got his face on the front of it. I think it's labeled President Trump. Okay? Can you run that rolling for me? And we'll give you a taste of how he talks about the Nazis. All right?
Why did you wait so long to last week?
I didn't wait long. I didn't wait long. I didn't wait long. I wanted to make sure, unlike most politicians, that what I said was correct, not make a quick statement. I couldn't have made it sooner because I didn't know all of the facts. Frankly, people still don't know all of the facts. What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt?
Let
me ask you this. What about the fact they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. You had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. Those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee. This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop? Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, excuse me, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him?
I do love
Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner.
How concerned are you about race relations in America? And do you think things have gotten worse or better since you took office?
I think they've gotten better or the same. Look, they've been frayed for a long time. And you can ask President Obama about that because he'd make speeches about it. But I believe that the fact that I brought in, it will be soon, millions of jobs. You see where companies are moving back into our country. I think that's going to have a tremendous positive impact on race relations.
Now, is he sane? I mean, he's lying through his teeth. And he's talking about slave owners, and we're talking about Nazis. About the problem with white supremacy. Now, there's a true white supremacist. He thinks he's superior to everybody. And he wants to bring back white supremacy to America. Now, that's another sickness. So is he sane? Did he sound sane there?
Well, I'm not where I can evaluate him.
Right. That's what I'm trying
That's
to
not
say.
the work that I do. But
we have
I will
to.
say that when we see certain kinds of behaviors that are outside of the norm, that we have to question what we see. And I think in this country, there are many folk who have been rocked to sleep, so to speak, and are not questioning what they see.
Okay.
And I think even when we talk about Las Vegas, we have to question what we see. The kind of violence that we're seeing in the country, the kind of violence that came as a result of talking about immigrant people and that they don't belong here.
Exactly.
And that this is not the place for them and that they're taking up space from people who were born here. And so we started seeing hate crimes against people who are immigrant people who come from another country and want a better life and have come here and may not be citizens. So I think we have to be careful about supporting certain mindsets because there were people who came out when that was said by the 45th about immigrants that people came out and supported that kind of thinking. I think we have to be careful about supporting that because immigrant people will come here as human beings. They come here for something better. They want what we want. And I think that because we saw so much more violence come against people who were immigrants, or it's questioning their status and that kind of thing. You know, we made people very afraid. We polarized, whole groups of people where communities were merging and meshing together. Now they began to kind of separate because it was almost as if, you know, they don't belong here. We saw shops close. People closed their shops and left. And because they were afraid that they would be deported and mistreated and incarcerated. So I think that we have to think as a country, as a people, more about who we are and what we're allowing to happen in our country. One person can't dictate everything, not if the people stand up against it. So I'm just thinking that, you know, this is a time for people to be fully engaged in their community, to pay attention to what's happening in the community, to look at issues of violence and say, how can I stop those things from happening in my community? What kinds of things do I need to be doing? And not be apathetic bystanders and just wait for somebody else to save the day or follow somebody else's philosophy. Young people like young Dimonique doing the kinds of things that she's doing with the National Action Network. I'm always proud to see her up there leading the Huddle.
That's where she's here.
Not sitting down, but standing up and leading the Huddle. So we're always happy about that and raising issues. So Dimonique, I didn't hear much from you on what you thought about that.
Dimonique is a treasure. We're watching you grow, and I try and expose you to all this stuff. So you give me your input. But what you're doing at NAN is fabulous, really.
Thank you.
As you use a Trump term, marvelous.
What I think about it is I always talk about voting and how important voting is, and I'm like so excited. I'm gonna be like, well, I'm 16. I'm like, I'm a vote for the next presidential one. But people's like, why are you so excited? But no, I think voting is very serious, and I like that people are coming out and making sure they're within the number of change in the marches and stuff like that. But if you want to be honest, not all of those people voted. And then if they voted, they wrote on their voter sheet, Hennessy, all this dumb stuff, all people that was not nominated. If you didn't like both of them, you got to pick the best of both evils. When me and Ashley, we was walking out, registering people to vote for the presidential run, for the local votes, to show how serious and how important it was. People like, oh, I don't like none of them. And we got into so many arguments that day, and then also saying, I just got out of jail. And I was wondering why that was an excuse for so many people. Oh, I just got out of jail. So I always thought that, you know, when you just got out of jail, that you have to wait until your probation's over to try to get your papers on to voting again. Right? And turns out when NAN had the National Voter Registration Day on Tuesday, it was a laminated copy and copies for people to take who just got out of jail, was that as soon as you get out of jail, you can, how you apply to vote, you can do it again. Soon, the next day, if you want to get out of jail. So it's not a limitation.
So if you're a convicted felon, you can still vote in New York State?
Yes.
When did that change?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about
That's
that.
what-
The NAACP
But you're saying
has brought forth some information about that, but I can't give that to you for fact. I
But
know
you
that
had
as long as
registration?
you are not on parole,
you're not on parole.
not on parole.
Not on
you can't,
parole?
Not on-
You can't vote while you're on parole. Once you clear parole, you can vote. But I think it might be great, Mr. Gilchrist, to have someone from the NAACP, of course, the fabulous Hazel Dukes, is always available to talk about these issues, and in particular, they're trying to make sure that people who have been incarcerated understand what their rights are and when they have the opportunity to vote. So I don't want to guess or surmise. I would love if we could hear the voice of Hazel Dukes and watch her on television telling people about the opportunity to vote, even if they've been incarcerated.
So how effective was this campaign of yours?
Of getting out
The
to
voting
vote.
campaign.
Getting out to vote.
It was. There's power in numbers. We got 15 people to register to vote within Harlem, which was really good. So that's 15 more people, 15 more.
But you were only out
voices.
there an hour or so, right?
Yeah, only an hour.
That's not bad.
That's good.
That's not bad.
That's good.
That's right.
There's 15 more people to vote.
Okay.
We did a voter registration drive in Harlem Renaissance High School, and we were able to get a good amount of young people registered to vote. And some were somewhat apathetic and said, you know, I don't want to vote. I'm not interested in voting. But when they saw their friends register to vote, then we got more people involved. So I think that we have to make it the trend, which Dimonique is leading the way for that, her and Ashley Sharpton. Make it the trend. Make it
Oh,
the
I forgot
thing
about Ashley.
that everyone should be involved in. We're trying to do that with young people when we registered them at Harlem Renaissance High School, that we played a little music, we let them dance it up, we gave out stickers and buttons, and we had balloons up. And these are the kinds of things we have to make it exciting to young people. You registered, shake some pom-poms, do something, and clap it up for someone who has agreed to participate in
Democracy.
in the democracy. That's right.
I must apologize to Ashley that we didn't have it set up. She was supposed to Skype in today, but I understand she's busy at 30 Rock with her dad. And I wanted to go into what Ashley does with the NAN youth at the Youth Huddle on Mondays. And you're the president, and you're doing a great job.
Yes,
and,
she is.
Yeah.
And we just need more kids, not kids, I mean
Young people.
youth. Young people to come to NAN's Huddle every Monday at 6 o'clock, 106 West 145th Street. And this is your president right here. She's into everything, all right?
I try to be.
And you're 16,
About some of the discussions.
and you're doing well in school. And
I'm trying. I'm really trying because 11th grade, colleges. One college actually
but think
reached out to
think
me.
of your grades as money.
That's what my grandma said. She was like, you know, you're working hard now. When you get older, you can relax as long as your grades is fine and you have a job
That's
that
right.
you love and want to do.
That means less tuition you have to pay if your grades are good. That's what I mean.
Trying to get the scholarship.
Each
honey.
A is worth $10,000 maybe, you know, on a scholarship. You
Yeah.
see Victoria got a full scholarship?
To Duke, she's loving it. Yep.
Oh, wow. This is what comes out of the NAN youth,
Yeah.
right?
I used to. My grandma used to bring my mom when she was younger, so when
Right.
Ashley and Dominique was babies, so was my mom, and they would hang out. Well, like, play around.
So it's generational.
Yeah, I used to. Oh my God, I never understood it. So if we did not go, my grandma would make me listen to the radio, and I'll try to go to sleep, and she'll hit me to wake up. To like, she was like, "You need to know this," and I knew it was important, but not to the extent of which it was. And like 9, starting to get it, like, oh, I do get it. It is important. So I became interested in it, and I grew fond of it, and now here I am.
And it's an important part of your life now.
Yeah. Yes,
Right?
it is.
I mean,
feel
it's
like-
hard to survive as a youth today,
Oh,
being black in
absolutely.
America. I mean, look at
Yes.
what we're up against. I mean, see, Obama to me was a blessing from God. You know, I'm old enough that when I saw him as president,
Yeah, I'm happy my grandma.
man,
got the chance to see it.
that was heaven for me. And people that didn't appreciate it, we appreciate him now. And look at who got in there behind him. This man was a racist from the word go. And people have a hard time calling him a racist.
I don't know
understand
why.
it.
I mean, it's
He's obvious. It's not obvious. It's quite obvious. But you still, well, see, this is a racist country. And people don't want to admit to it. But we've always known it. I mean, we've seen it all over the place. I've
have-
lived with it
definitely
my
have
life,
work to do
and
in
I've
this
always
country.
laughed at it. I thought white supremacy, I said, you got to be joking. We're the spiritual people of the planet. We have to be careful we're not drawn to their habits. See?
I was reading an article in class. It's part government. We have a class where we make sure that we know all the branches of the government, the legislative, all that, and to make sure that we get involved within the government. So I thought that was really nice. And it was an article, and he told us to read it. And I want to ask you a question on it. Do you think slavery began because of money, communists, as in money? So, yeah.
It was all about money.
So do you think
Don't
that
take
it
it
was because of hatred of us black people, or you think because
No,
it was
we
the
were
money?
good workers. We worked for free.
Then so where did hatred begin?
That we were actually better than them. They were. Actually,
the
when you-
hatred came from a lot of places. One, anytime that you think, or anytime that you have to overpower people because you need to use their labor for free. So you have to begin to make them think that they are inferior, meaning less than, so that they can stay in the position of inferiority, which means as a slave, so that they would not rebel. So racism comes out of all of that. Just having to look down on people, making people smaller, seeing people as just like machinery, having to work for free, and not seeing their value. And so in order for them to stay that way, you have to begin to plant a mindset that creates that inside that person that you are having to work for free, right? Because you want them to stay in a small-minded place. You don't want them to feel good about themselves. You don't want them to feel like they have value, because if they do, there will be an uprising, and your free labor will leave or run away, and they didn't want that. So we have to know where these things come from. A lot of it has to do with spirit and mind control.
That's
and
it.
Even today, Dominique, and I'm glad that you're here, I'm glad that you are on point, leading the huddle. And I think that one thing that young people have to remember with all of these things, when we talk about gun violence, when we talk about things that happen in schools, the bullying that we saw just recently in the Bronx, and the outcome of that, that young people have to stay on purpose, right? And you have to know who you are and what you want, and kind of stay with people who are directed in the right way. You know, because the people that you're around help plant the seed of having you act and feel in an inferior kind of way. And we're even seeing that where violence is concerned.
And see, you have to understand that hate comes from jealousy and envy. I've always known most white supremacists to be fools, because we've always been the spiritual people of the planet. When we discover that, that's when we rise up and we're free. And slavery was nothing but a game. That's all. They bamboozled us to believe we were nothing. They bamboozled us to believe that we were inferior. And it came up throughout life, throughout, you know, the birth of a nation. They've always brainwashed us to believe that we were inferior.
That's right.
By feeding us, that's what they're doing today. This is all planned genocide. And when you realize that the plan is against you, you unite as a people and rebel.
That's right.
Instead of that, we've got these Willie Lynch syndromes, and we're our own worst enemies a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You know, this is our problem.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Willie Lynch syndrome.
And that's a problem throughout our lifetime. The light against dark, the old against the young.
The have and the have-nots.
Yeah, you know,
those who are educated, those who aren't.
Or you lighter and brighter than me, and you got better breaks than I did. I get that sometime, because I was never afraid. I was from New York. But see, the point is, we're all human. We're the spiritual people of the planet. We have the God center in us. If you have God in your life, that's the only way for a black person or a person of color to survive. Look at the difference between us and Trump. Trump is developed through demonic spirit. He's a demonic spirit. We have to understand that. That's why I display his ignorance. That's a demon there. A true demon. He's always been like that. I know the man well. I've got 5 years, I'm 5 years older than Trump. He's always been a deviant, a con. His whole life is full of conning people. And this is New York, the biggest cons on the planet, right here in New York.
Yes.
Look how he got where he is. He talked about Obama, wasn't born and raised. Obama wasn't an American.
Paid, what was it, in the millions
This
for people to try to
birtherism.
find out.
Birtherism.
Birth certificate.
Look how he got to be nominated, screaming and talking about people.
Yep. He
Being
was
a-
surprised that he
all
became
right.
president.
And look what he's doing as president. He's showing us the demonic spirit of the Republicans.
Oh, absolutely.
And look how they treated Obama. All right, just to bring you back a little nostalgic, I'm bringing you back to a president, a real president. Now, this is President Obama on immigration. Now, people forget, I ran this on one of the other shows, how he had an immigration bill that sat in the House for a year and a half. People don't realize that. He had it passed by the Senate, and Boehner would never bring it up for a vote in the House. All right? So play that roll in, and we'll be right back at you. You got that?
There is bipartisan hope of getting it done. This year, the Senate passed an immigration reform bill by a wide bipartisan majority, and it addresses the key issues that need to be addressed. It would strengthen our borders. It would level the playing field by holding employers accountable if they knowingly hire undocumented workers. It would modernize our legal immigration system so that we eliminate the backlog of family visas and make it easier to attract highly skilled entrepreneurs from beyond our borders. It would make sure that everybody plays by the same rules by providing a pathway to earn citizenship for those who are living in the shadows. A path that includes passing a background check and learning English and paying taxes and a penalty and getting in line behind everyone trying to come here the right way. And each of these pieces would go a long way towards fixing our broken immigration system. Each of them has been supported by Democrats and Republicans in the past. There's no reason we can't come together and get it done. And what's more, we know the immigration reform that we're proposing would boost our economy and shrink our deficits. Independent economists have said that if the Senate bill became law over the next 2 decades, our economy would grow by $1.4 trillion more, and it would reduce our deficits by $850 billion more. And you don't have to be an economist to figure out that workers will be more productive if they've got their families here with them. They're not worried about deportation. They're not living halfway around the world. This isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Right now, it's up to Republicans in the House to decide if we can move forward as a country on this bill. If they don't want to see it happen, they've got to explain why. The good news is, just this past week, Speaker Boehner said that he is hopeful we can make progress on immigration reform. And that is good news. I believe the Speaker is sincere. I think he genuinely wants to get it done. And that's something we should be thankful for this week. And I think there are a number of other House Republicans who also want to get this done. Some of them are hesitant to do it in one big bill like the Senate did. That's okay. They can, it's Thanksgiving. You know, we can carve that bird into multiple pieces.
Now, that's who we can call a president. And he had all the answers. I mean, that was passed in the Senate. It was passed in the Senate. If you listen to him, he said it was passed already in the Senate. And all we had to do was pass it in the House. Usually it's vice versa, House, then the Senate. But he had it passed in the Senate, and Boehner had the majority in the House and would never bring it up for a vote. It sat there in the House for over a year, all right? And he was, I think after a year, he was talking about it there. So this is, he had the answers, and still today we don't have an immigration bill. And look, we have Trump as the president.
And he's rolling
all
back
this
some
to
of
bring-
what has been worked on so hard. The 45th president is rolling some of those things back.
Everything back. He put Jeff Sessions in the Justice Department, and all those improvements we had in the Justice Department are taking them back. He took everything back. Every good that Obama did,
It was
Sessions
undone by him.
erased it all.
Are really realizing it now that Trump is just really a madman, and I think what the NFL people are doing is powerful. Even restaurants are taking their own approach. They post up in the corner stores, immigrants are welcomed here. Or they don't say immigrants, they say DACA are welcomed here. Dreamers are welcomed here. And then you have the anti-Trump rallies are really big, and you have the few ignorant people there. You have it was just all the way backwards. I think that it was on Instagram it was hashtag Black Women for Trump. It didn't go but that far. I think that there are power in numbers, and I think what we're doing now is a good approach, and I think we just need to keep doing it to get what we want, which is freedom.
How has this affected your work, Iesha?
With my work,
has it improved it? I mean, people feel
and when
better
you
about
say
themselves?
it, how has it affected my work? You mean the president?
Donald Trump being president?
Well, I mean, I have to be honest. This work in dealing with issues around guns and gun violence was not made easier. I will say that.
Okay.
But there was lots of shooting going on before Donald Trump. One of the things that I'm most proud of is that our mayor recently recognized publicly that in New York City, violent crimes are down. Homicides where guns are concerned are down. And we credit down 20%. We credit the Cure Violence programs for that. So all across the city, there are 18 Cure Violence sites, and those sites have been working very hard to interrupt and intervene and de-escalate where violence is concerned. Where I have greater concern around violence is that we are seeing. And right after all of this stuff came out about immigrants and they don't belong here and they need to go back home, and our 45th said that, we did see people create violent acts against immigrant people who may not have been born in this country, and even those who may have. So there was a call for people to protect immigrant people and to not follow a mindset of they don't matter and they don't belong. And so I think because the communities have banded together to support people who come from other countries in a way that is good, we saw people be able to kind of hold that violence that was beginning to show its ugly head, to hold that violence back and to begin to create more peaceful solutions and to teach people to not go after people just because they come from somewhere else. And to not create negative situations. And so one of the things I always like to do, and I'm glad to have an opportunity to be here, is to talk to people about issues of violence. And we don't have to follow anyone who says to either bring harm to someone or that they don't count, and that we have an opportunity to speak up.
How important is for us to understand the Willie Lynch syndrome?
Well, it's important for us to understand the Willie Lynch syndrome. And people think Willie Lynch was a real man. He wasn't.
Yes, he was.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
They said that he wasn't.
No, he was.
That he created, that this letter was created by someone.
No, it was a real person.
Okay. Well, then the anniversary of the whole Willie Lynch theory syndrome.
I mean, this is 1700s.
Right.
He wrote that.
It's almost 300 years old, if I'm correct. And so what was planted, because we can go back and forth whether he was a real person or not, and I'll check that out when I leave here because I always like to research. But the thing that does really matter strongly more than who he was is the theory. Because a lot of what was implanted during that time, get your slaves to do so and so, treat one over the other, make them feel like they're more important than the other one. The light is better than the dark. That we are beginning to still, not beginning, we are still seeing some of those same theories in effect, right? And so just the mental slavery, the physical, the emotional slavery, the mental bondage that people are in. Anytime young people can pull out a gun and shoot another young person, that says, I don't like you because I don't like me. When I shoot you, I shoot myself. And so,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
so,
that's
and there's
what I'm talking
a
about.
gentleman who made
You know?
a song by that same name. But it's almost as if you're turning a gun on someone and you're turning on yourself because you've learned to not like who you are.
What
and not
about the
appreciate
music
who
being
you
an
are.
important influence of all this?
We see
Okay,
about the music? No, you're a youth. I mean, you're not accustomed to doo-wops, and when we were lovers instead of killers. I mean, in my day, you had to be a gentleman and a lover.
I think
Today, you can cuss your mother out, and I mean, my goodness.
Okay, that is not okay. What most rappers talk about bees and hoes and just getting money and killing people is not okay. But when you look at it, the rapper is taking the standpoint of what they see within their community. If you see it, people that grow up in the projects, you see drugs, money. You don't see doctors. People that do good in the world statistically, that's what's around them. They see that within their community. They see, oh, Brother John's a doctor. You have, oh, that person's a lawyer. You know what? I'm going to strive because that is what expected of me because I grew up within this community.
That's right.
Rather than when there is a rapper or someone that makes music that is not fond of respectable people. That's what you see, and that's what's displayed to us. So when you take that rapper, when you take that person that's making those type of music out of that community and put them in another one, they will 9 times out of 10 they won't rap about the same things that they rapped about, which they saw.
Well, you know, I want to use the word because the word means low life. All
The
right?
N-word?
The N-word. N-word. Now, I think a lot of people think you have to act like a nigger in order to be black. And that's how I see most, you've got to be down and you can't be articulate and knowledgeable and express yourself well. You have to be down and dirty in order to be black.
And unable to express yourself.
You know,
I used to get
you know what I
bullied
mean?
for talking
This is
white.
what I resent. I mean, it's always been, but if you act white, you speak well, I mean, that shouldn't happen. That's part of the planned genocide. Like they plant crack in our community. When the Republicans came in 1980, that was another planned genocide. The crack that was planted in our communities, especially where there were, especially in the West Coast. And when the gangs got together and started selling and killing each other.
We saw a crack epidemic that took down
very much so. But it started out
entire
there.
neighborhoods.
It started out there.
Absolutely. When we look at Harlem itself,
right.
a lot of the property that we see
Exactly.
now flourishing and people buying and fixing up
Were crack houses.
were crack houses and shifted to where people vacated and had to vacate, or were told they had to vacate, and those buildings were left empty for years. 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years, throughout the crack epidemic.
That's right.
And what we saw was other folk came into the community to purchase that property.
And in Harlem, most of those properties became city-owned.
Oh, absolutely.
All
And
right.
so, and then for sale to people who didn't live there.
That's
so
right.
we watched neighborhoods die.
That's it.
We watched our young mothers have babies that died in city hospitals because of being born to crack addiction. So we have some work to do.
And it destroyed a whole generation.
Oh,
or
absolutely.
2 generations.
I would say 2 generations.
2 generations.
Right, and right now we're seeing
Right
the
here in New
residual
York.
effects of the crack,
That's exactly
crack
it.
epidemic.
That's
we are
right.
seeing that.
But we have to
when we look
understand
at gun
that.
violence
We have
and
to
some of the other
understand that.
issues.
Somebody your age,
It's other drugs too.
somebody your age has to understand. Pre-1980, we had a completely different world.
Yeah, it was different than, like you said, other drugs too that we see now.
Yeah.
It's very, very different. Crack was devastating.
Yeah.
Like it would take out the grandmother, the mother. Mothers would leave their
Everybody.
babies in the home. It was very
Everybody.
different than what we're seeing now. They would leave their children uncared for, bring their daughters
it.
and sons into prostitution in
That's
order to
it.
get
It was
crack. It was
devastating.
horrible. So when you get a chance, I want you to go and
really.
research
I
that
mean,
era and
well,
just kind of see the kinds of things that
anybody
were
that
happening
was,
at that
you know,
time.
before 1980, you have no idea what sort of genocidal effect that had on us.
My grandmother
You know?
spoke to me about it.
Really.
I think what song sums it up the most, because I always listen to music, is O.J. Simpson by Jay-Z. where he talks about, he uses the N-word very strongly, but to show what's within the black community, he said, you know, people posting money up on Instagram, on Snapchat, you think that's bullying when he just bought his daughter a $1 million painting that's worth like $2 million, $4 million right now. And he said that's what it is. African American people don't look at the after fact of economic turmoil that we're going through right now. And that painting is going to be worth more when his twins are grown up and all that. So what he's saying is, instead of using that with drugs and stuff like that, we could put it to something else, get our own buildings, save up, have an actual program or buildings where we could say that we own, you know.
Well, I'd like to see Jay-Z put his money where his mouth is. I know that he's done some things.
Is he not Illuminati?
I don't know much about that, but I do know that what he is asking people to do, that he can help support some of the efforts, like the efforts of Street Corner Resources, the Youth Huddle, and others, to do some of the things that need to be
that's another
cared for.
Well, his wife just went to Texas and helped out with
the music is another planned genocide. That's what I'm saying.
When you take that person out of the community,
you know,
then it won't.
When you get away from doo-wop, and we were love energy back in the day. We were nothing but love energy for people. I mean, when Nat King Cole sat down and sang a song, we made millions of babies, you know? And what do we have now? The music is doing what? Having people kill each other? Disrespecting their mother? When a race of people start disrespecting their women, that's real genocide.
Yes.
All right? So, ladies, it's been a treat. I watch the both of you every Monday, and you give me, an old man like me, it's great to see youth and Mama Bear here.
Well, I love being around the young people. I don't get to huddle as often as I used to because of the work that we're doing in the community with anti-violence, so sometimes that kind of gets in the way. But when I need to show up, I make sure that I show up, you know, and we always have great, one of the things that people need to really know is that we have great conversation at the Huddle.
That's it.
That
when is
panels on gun violence.
Right, we did panels on gun violence every Monday, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, where is it?
From 6 to 8.
6 to 8?
Yep.
At where?
Village of Harlem, right on 145th Street.
106
106 West 145th Street.
6
every
to 8.
Monday. And you come here every Wednesday at 5 o'clock for the Gilchrist Experience. Ladies, it's been a pleasure.
The God in me loves the God in you.
Thank you. Oh, you remember. Oh, she said it. The God in me loves the God in you. Stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience. We got 30 seconds. What do we do with that? Say goodbye to people.
Well, thank you all for tuning in, and thank you, Mr. Gilchrist, for having us and giving us the platform to talk about so many important issues. Yes, gun violence. We talked about the Huddle. So this was a great experience. I'm really always glad to be here.
Stay tuned. Come back next week, and power to the people. Peace. God bless.
Now I'm hungry. I got to go to the community board meeting, so I got to get out of here.
What community board meeting?
Community. So we're there.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.